Okay, let's dive in. Artificial General Intelligence, AGI. That term is it's everywhere right now, isn't it?
It really is. And it hints at these massive changes we can barely, wrap our heads around.
Exactly. But what is it really? And I guess the big question, how close are we?
Well, for this deep dive, we're looking at someone right in the thick of it.
Demis Hassabis, co-founder of DeepMind, now CEO of Google's AI division.
Yeah, and his perspective is fascinating because he's coming at it as a serious scientist.
Right, the AlphaFold guy, Nobel Prize for that protein folding AI.
Precisely. So
Yeah.
he has that scientific credibility, and he's leading one of the major labs. It gives his thoughts, well, quite a bit of weight.
For sure. So our mission today basically is to unpack what he said in that Time interview from March 2025.
That's the one on their YouTube channel.
We want to get his take on the timeline for AGI, the upsides, the downsides.
The best and worst cases he sees.
Yeah, and the challenges, like how do you build this stuff responsibly?
And also, maybe a bit about how he sees it as a scientist, but also, as a parent in this changing world.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. How does Hassabis actually define AGI?
Well, his definition is pretty broad, actually. He says it's a system that has any cognitive capability a human has.
Any capability. Wow. So not just good at one thing, but generally intelligent like us.
That's the idea. Understanding, learning, problem solving across different areas. The whole package, potentially.
Okay. So the million-dollar question, the timeline, what's his prediction?
He puts it in a range, sort of a probability distribution. Around 5 to 10 years.
5 to 10 years.
Yeah, but he's quick to add, it's uncertain. Some experts think sooner. It's not like he's setting a date.
But still, that feels quite close.
It does. And what's really interesting is he says building general AI was always the goal for DeepMind, right from the start.
Oh, really? So it wasn't just about games or specific problems?
Apparently not. He links it back to the original dreams of AI research in the 1950s.
Yeah.
This has been their North Star all along, you could say.
That puts things like AlphaFold in a different light then, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's not just some specialized side project. It's proof that the general techniques they're developing can solve these massive specific problems.
So AlphaFold used those core DeepMind technologies.
Yep, neural networks. The
Oh.
kind of stuff they first used for mastering games, believe it or not.
Uh-huh. So it's like having this really adaptable toolkit.
Pretty much. You develop the general methods, then you can fine-tune them for specific, really complex tasks like protein folding.
And these general methods, they're still getting better.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
He talks about moving beyond just language models now.
Okay. Towards what?
Towards these multimodal foundational models. Think AI that understands space, physics.
Not just words.
Right. Models that can process images, video, sound, more like how we perceive the world, combining senses.
So reading, seeing, hearing, understanding the physical world.
That's the direction. And that kind of holistic understanding, well, that feels like a big step toward the general part of AGI.
Okay, so potential timeline, accelerating tech. Let's shift gears. What's the dream scenario? If this all goes well, what does Hassabis see happening?
The best case. He gets pretty optimistic here, looking maybe 10 years out or more.
Give us the highlights.
Well, imagine AI helping us cure all diseases.
All diseases? Seriously?
That's the vision. Discovering new energy sources, like finally cracking fusion or making super efficient batteries, new materials like superconductors.
Wow. So solving the big ones, climate change, health.
Pretty much. Using AI as this incredible tool for scientific discovery and problem solving on a massive scale. He talks about maximum human flourishing, even enabling things like space travel more readily. It's a really hopeful picture.
It sounds incredible, but there's always a but, isn't there?
There usually is with powerful tech. Hassabis is very clear this is dual-use stuff.
Meaning it can be used for good or not so good.
Exactly. Huge benefits, but also potential for harm. He flags two main risks.
Okay, what's the first one?
Misuse by bad actors. Could be individuals, groups, even rogue nations.
Right. How do you give the good guys access without the bad guys getting it too?
That's the core problem, he points out. It's incredibly difficult, a real challenge.
And the second risk?
That lies more in the AI itself, especially as it gets more autonomous. Agent-based systems, he calls them.
Agent-based, meaning they can act on their own, set their own goals.
Kind of, yeah. Systems that aren't just processing data, but are actively doing things in the world.
Okay, I can see how that gets tricky.
Right. How do you maintain control? How do you even understand why a super intelligent system is doing what it's doing? And how do you build safeguards that it can't learn its way around, especially if it's self-improving.
And he mentioned these things could be used for harm directly, like flipping the purpose.
Yeah, that's a sobering example he gives. An AI designed to find cures could potentially be repurposed to design toxins instead.
Yikes. Okay.
So, because the impact is global, he really stresses the need for international agreement.
On what exactly?
On standards for building AI, the goals we design into them, how they're deployed, how they're used, it has to be a coordinated effort, he argues.
Which leads us into that whole debate about, well, AI going rogue, right?
Yeah.
Developing its own goals, seeking power, maybe even deceiving us. Is he worried about that? Sentience.
He acknowledges the debate is fierce. He points out you have very smart people, like Jan LeCun, who were pretty skeptical about those kinds of risks, seeing them as overblown.
Okay.
But then you have other pioneers, giants like Jeff Hinton and Yoshua Bengio, who are genuinely concerned.
So top experts disagree strongly.
Exactly. And Hassabis' take is basically, if the experts are this divided, it probably means we just don't know enough yet. We don't have the data to really quantify that risk properly.
That makes it's uncharted territory.
He does mention some hopeful signs, though, like how relatively easy it's been to get useful chatbots from these big language models with fairly simple fine-tuning.
Suggesting maybe control isn't as hard as some fear.
Possibly. It hints that maybe aligning these things might be more tractable than the absolute worst-case scenarios suggest.
But he still thinks there is significant risk.
Oh, definitely. His bottom line is, the risk is real, it's significant, and we absolutely need to be doing careful research now to understand and mitigate it proactively, not waiting until it's too late.
Right. Can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Pretty much. The stakes are just too high.
Okay, let's shift perspective a bit. The societal impact. It's going to be huge, right? How does he think about this as a parent, raising kids who will grow up with this?
Yeah, he compares it to his own experience growing up during the computer revolution.
Okay, so feeling like things are changing fast.
Yes, but also emphasizing that humans are pretty adaptable. He thinks future generations will just see AGI as normal, like kids today see smartphones or the internet. It'll just be part of the landscape.
So his advice isn't to shield kids from it.
Quite the opposite, actually. Embrace it. Learn the tools. He sees it as a way for people to become like superpowered in their creativity and productivity.
Learn to use the AI effectively.
Exactly.
Has it changed how he thinks about like what skills kids need? Is he telling his kids different things now?
Interestingly, he says, not fundamentally. He still thinks core skills programming, math, critical thinking are vital.
Even with AI doing more.
Yeah, though he acknowledges the nature of those skills might change. Like maybe programming becomes more about using natural language to instruct the AI.
Ah, okay. So the fundamentals matter, but how you apply them might evolve.
Right. The key thing for him seems to be understanding how the tools work. What are their strengths? What are their limitations? Using them wisely, not blindly.
Makes sense. Being AI literate, I guess.
Something like that.
Going back to his worries, though, you mentioned international cooperation. Is that still a big one for him?
Huge.
Yeah.
He brings it up again as something that genuinely keeps him up at night, getting that global alignment on standards and safety.
And is his worry just about cooperation or also about timing?
Both. He expresses real concern that society as a whole might just not be ready for AGI if it arrives in that 5 to 10 year window he mentioned.
We're not prepared for the disruption.
Or for the questions it raises. He emphasizes we need much more thought, more public discussion about control, about access, about what this all means for us.
It's interesting to hear about influences, too. Does he mention any portrayals of AI in fiction that he likes or that resonate?
He does. He points to the robots in Interstellar.
TARS and Case.
Yeah, as examples of helpful, even self-sacrificing AI, a positive vision.
Okay. Anything else?
He also mentions Blade Runner.
Ah, classic. More ambiguous there.
Right. He likes it because it raises those deep philosophical questions about consciousness in artificial beings, which ties into his own scientific interests, obviously.
So on that note, consciousness. Does he think current AI is conscious?
His current view is no, they aren't.
And his recommendation?
It's quite pragmatic, actually. He suggests we should focus on building really useful non-conscious AI tools first. So we can then use those tools to help us understand our own minds better, to figure out what consciousness actually is. Use AI to advance neuroscience, essentially.
Use AI to study ourselves. That's fascinating.
Isn't it? Build the tool to understand the ultimate mystery.
So, wrapping things up, how does Hassabis see himself in all this? What's his driving force?
He identifies primarily as a scientist. That seems to be his core identity.
Driven by curiosity.
Exactly. He talks about the pursuit of knowledge, wanting to understand the world, intelligence, consciousness, these fundamental questions.
And building AI is the way to get at those questions.
For him, yes. It's both a way to explore intelligence directly and to create a tool that can accelerate discovery in other sciences, chemistry, physics, biology, like we saw with AlphaFold.
What about the entrepreneur part? Leading DeepMind, now Google AI.
He sees being an entrepreneur as sort of the fastest way to get things done, to make the science happen in the real world. And the engineer part is about making sure it has a practical, positive impact.
Science first, but with a drive to build and apply it.
That seems to be the essence of it.
Okay, so let's recap the key takeaways from Hassabis' perspective.
Well, first, AGI seems likely, maybe within 5 to 10 years in his view. That's soon.
And it holds incredible potential, right? Curing diseases, solving energy crises, huge progress.
Absolutely. The best case scenario is transformative. But second takeaway, the risks are also very real.
Dual-use technology, misuse by bad actors, and the challenge of controlling autonomous, superintelligent systems.
Yep. Which leads to the third point, the absolute necessity of responsible development, international cooperation, safety research, getting ahead of the curve.
And the whole consciousness question is still very much an open debate, but his focus is on using AI as a tool for understanding, including understanding ourselves.
Exactly. Build useful non-conscious tools first to help figure out the bigger mysteries later.
Right. So that leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to chew on.
Considering Hassabis' focus on understanding AI's limits and also the nature of consciousness itself,
What fundamental questions about what it means to be human might AGI development ultimately force us all to confront?
yeah, that's something worth thinking about as this technology continues to race forward, something beyond just the tech itself.